Frue Plads, or the Square of Our Lady, is a public square located on the north side of the Church of Our Lady in the city center of Copenhagen. It is rectangularly shaped and is bound by the church on the southern border, the University of Copenhagen's main building on the northern border, Norgel to the west, and Fjellstrand to the east. The original location of the square was a little more north, whereas the current location was the Church of Our Lady's graveyard. After the Reformation, the University of Copenhagen took over the space. The building overlooking the graveyard was converted into an anatomical theater for the university, but was later destroyed by the Copenhagen Fire of 1728. After the fire and British bombardment, it was decided that the graveyard would not be reconstructed. The square now lends itself to students going to study in the university library, tourists exploring the city center, and Danish citizens traveling to and from Nørreport Station. I visited the square on a nicer day where it was warm and on a day where it was cold, cloudy, and rainy. There were few people occupying the square due to the torrential downpour of rain. However, there were a good amount of people using the square on the nicer day. There were people using the square as a way to get into the city, and some people sitting down on benches that lined the walls of the university building. A mix of tourists and locals were seen throughout the plaza, as indicated by people biking through the square on a hotel-rented bike or stopping to take pictures on the square. Additionally, a tour bus was parked in the square. I decided to investigate how the target audience for a public space affects how it's used, and does the target leave room for flexibility in use. I used the 12 criteria and a stationary moving count in order to determine who was using the square and how. I thought this would be interesting to observe because it is near a college, library, and shopping center. As a result, I wanted to see if Frue Plads is used as a way to get from one place to another, or if people dwelled in the square throughout the day. Overall, I found that most people used Frue Plads as a way to get from one place to another. During a 20-minute time period on the nicer day, there was almost a 4-to-1 ratio of moving people to stationary people. Moving people were defined as anyone who crossed through the square via bike or foot. People traveling on the sidewalks along Norgel and Fjellstrand were not included in the count unless they crossed through the square. Stationary people were defined as individuals sitting anywhere within the plaza, including the benches along the buildings and under the tree, steps, or at the gelato stand in the square. I repeated this count a little later in the day after it got colder and cloudier. Since it was close to 4 p.m., there were significantly more people using the square. The moving count doubled over a 20-minute period, while the stationary count decreased. While traffic through the plaza increased, the number of stationary people decreased because of the weather declining and the lack of protection from the elements. In addition to studying the number of people moving or sitting, I also assessed the square's function as a public space. In terms of protection, the space is protected against traffic and accidents because there is little car traffic. When there were cars, they drove slowly and were cautious of pedestrians and bikers. The area is pretty safe during the day and at night. There isn't much light, but the ice cream shop is usually open and has people nearby. The square is pretty quiet with no noise out of the ordinary, dust, smells, or pollution. The square has few spaces for rain protection, so it empties out quickly when raining. The space is somewhat accessible, but is limited due to the cobblestone on the street and along the sidewalks. This makes it difficult for people in wheelchairs, bikers, and people pushing strollers. However, it is a straight path that requires no detours. While the structure provides some accessibility issues, it is completely open for people to stand around, lean against the wall, and take in the architecture. If people don't want to stand, there are 12 benches along the sides and 3 under the tree, as well as steps which can be used for seating. In terms of activities and things to view, there isn't much to look at besides busts of important figures. It could be nice for the university to sponsor artists to display artwork to brighten up the space. Also, there are no spaces for people to be active. Putting trampolines in parts of the square could be an easy fix and a welcome study break for students. In terms of scale, people on the edges get lost in the surroundings depending on where you sit in the square. In conclusion, Frue Plads is a nice square that provides people with a quiet space to relax during the day and serves as a path to get into the city center. It has an adequate amount of seating options, but could have spaces for activity, more greenery, and more color. Overall, it helps people with city life by allowing them to socialize.